Hi, everybody. Welcome to, I believe, the last panel of today. Commenting on factors of disco ball here at 8 a.m. It's 4:30 p.m. Time for the disco ball to go on. Now, in all seriousness, thank you, Brand Innovators. It's been a great 2 days. Really excited to be here with this awesome group of panelists. I'm Benedict, I'm SVP of Enterprise Sales. I'm really new with Mountain, and I'm really new to the Mountain company. I just started 8 weeks ago, but I've grown up in the connected television space, like 12 years with Hulu. At Mountain, we are really turning connected television into a performance marketing channel. So a lot of talk about attribution. If you have any questions, we'll talk to you later. That's my sales pitch. And on to what's fun and next. So we're here to talk about the future of and digital from a leadership perspective. I'd say over the course of the past 2 days, we've heard a lot about all of the disruption that's gone on in this space over the course of the past 2 years, whether it's streaming, e-com, NFTs, the metaverse, so much excitement, right? And so what better than to have these great leaders here to talk about how complex this world is, really, and truly some of the trends that are emerging, not to keep up, but to get ahead. And so I'm really excited to kind of dig in and talk about the future of digital and the space. And so before we kick off, I'm actually going to let everybody introduce themselves because we have a big panel here. You can just go down the line and just introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about, obviously, the great brands that you represent and work for, and a little bit more about the scope of your responsibility. I'm Sara, Gable, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. So our team is trying to say curious. Basically, we bring large internationally, but that's international. We have too many unique museums and so that we can meet people in their lifestyle. So we like to say connect for it. And just a lot of different moments. Hey everyone, I'm Kawalerski, Global Chief Marketing Officer of Bloomberg Media Group. So I wear a couple hats there. On one side, obviously, we're producing a lot of content for our subscribers and our visitors to our multi-platform brand and just to engage with our content. On the other hand, we are working with our advertising partners and thinking about how do we create the right environments for brands to show up and tell their stories in a really trusted, credible environment. So excited to dig into that more on this panel. Hi everyone, Carolyn Dawkins. I am the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Clinique. That cost me a lot of money. I will be paying for that dealing. So I look after our global integrated marketing, product marketing, data and analytics, and our online team with the mandate of growing the business and growing our next generation of consumers. So I am thrilled to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Hi everyone, I'm Rahul. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Digital Officer for Qunol. It's a leading heart health and joint health supplement company. Been there for the last 8 months. Prior to that, I used to work in Reckitt, where I worked for around 8+ years. I was the global marketing director on Lysol, charting their way into digital and e-commerce space for the future. That's why I'm super excited to be here for this esteemed panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Birchmeier, Director of Media for Conagra Brands. If you don't know Conagra, you might not know that name, but we own 85+ brands in the food and beverage space. Brands like Slim Jim, my personal favorite, Healthy Choice, Birchmeier, Ready Whip. So it's good to be here.
Awesome, thank you guys. So let's kick it off. We're going to focus and start our topic on streaming TV. I read yesterday that ad-supported streaming TV is like the new gold rush of media. And clearly, it's been a huge disruptor over the course of the past 2 years with the rise of AVOD and SVOD services, and stay at home, people have been streaming more than ever before. And really looking at what's happening, it's very much disruptive legacy ways of reaching audiences through linear channels. And so, Alex, the first question is really for you. as working for Conagra, representing brands like Slim Jim, who have been household names and brands in a very competitive CPG marketplace that tend to use linear TV as sort of a foundational media element. You and I have talked a lot about this, and you really reinvigorated how you're using video and really disrupted the model. So can you talk about sort of how you look at the trends and what you're doing to think about video and reaching audiences in new ways?
Sure. Yeah, it's crazy to think almost a year ago when we were going through our upfront negotiations with our agency, the data just wasn't there for us to continue with the model of the upfront. So we actually moved to 100% digital plans, focusing on OTT, digital, social, all of those types of channels, which is scary. Because you're not, as a marketer, you always have taught, the gold standard linear television, and then you build your plan around that. Now it's building from the bottom up, and really figuring out the ways to communicate effectively to our consumers without that channel of television. So it's been a fun ride, tricky conversations to have with your C-suite, but it's been awesome.
I love it. I think it's hugely disruptive, and I'd love to learn a little bit more too about how you're sort of looking at buying, whether it's upfront or a little bit more of like the scatter marketplace, just-in-time buying. Has that model changed for you too?
No scatter, no anything. We've moved completely away from that. So quarterly planning, all digital. And it makes us more nimble that way too. It's kind of archaic how you have to buy a complete year's worth of stuff and then want to go activate that. Too much happens, especially with all the trends and all of the new social platforms and digital platforms that keep popping up. So we are completely out of that model.
I need to move with the speed of culture and relevance, so I get it. Rahul, similar to what Alex has experienced, I know we talked a lot about your brand. Really, TV was steadfast in terms of how you're reaching audiences. So can you take us through a little bit of how your video investment strategy has evolved, where your biggest strength has become a little bit more of a challenge?
Yeah, the audience we speak with are 50 plus, if you take it. TV by far, traditional legal TV, is the one that works. It's been a big challenge. We knew cord cutting is happening, but we also knew that during COVID, it got accelerated. However, people staying in home, people watching so much of the TV, as well as the election of 2020, that just kept it afloat. We didn't really realize how bad it has hit till we have come out of it. And now when you look at CPL, now when you look at the TRPs, it's just rocking it. So it's a big challenge, it's a tough one. Honestly, I don't think we haven't found any player, and I'm offering to give to you, but we haven't found any player who can deliver that amount of volume through retailers like Walmart, Costco, build that kind of trust and reputation for a brand at the cost efficiency that it can be. I believe OTT will come in, but I think the curve is inverse as of now, right? The CPMs at OTT are much higher, but with the course of time, it's a matter of years. I heard some stats yesterday, which was shared in the Southwest session of featured content, that this year is the first year where there are more amount of series and upfront series being bought by OTT players than the national TV, which means it's a tipping point. With the increase in eyeballs here, with the increase in good content here, it's a matter of time when the CPMs there are going to pop in. It's a challenge for key network players to battle up. And for us, that's the opportunity we're looking for. But to really keep the mix in such a way which can drive volumes. Well, it's still waiting, we can see for a long time.
Yeah, I think it begs the question in terms too of how they can drive engagement in order to increase the eyeballs. And I think as sort of that scale continues to grow, the CPMs and the price value equation will start to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, just at one point on that, again, video strategy depends a lot on the brand. You could be an impulse product and it works perfectly fine. If you want to build trust for like a supplement category, it's very, very difficult to hold down that attention and keep saying, trust us. There are some companies who do it well, and I take inspiration from insurance companies who are still able to do it. But there is a hack to it. It's not that easy.
Mark, let me just point out what you just mentioned about engagement. Yeah. So Bloomberg Behavior has 2 OTT streaming channels. we have Bloomberg television, and we have Bloomberg pizza. And I think when we think about streaming, to your point, Rahul, of really how do we create that critical point of engagement, we think about it in two main ways. One, which is developing content for the big screen, which is a big shift, right? It's not just about the cut downs, it's not just about social, but it's about that environment. And secondly, is the need to talent-driven programming, right? In this time when there's so much out there, how are we going to cut through? And so we're really excited to partner with Chris Paul. Going to have a show that's launching this spring, and Barnett in the UK. So we're looking at how to expand globally with relevant people that are trusted to make sure that we have that environment. So thinking about the context and also the talent to drive that engagement.
I love it. Hang on to your mic. Next question to you too. Now, on the topic of content, I think Bloomberg has done a lot with purpose-driven content specifically, focused around sustainability, equality, personal finance. So can you talk a little bit more about the success that you've had in those channels, and also how you've gained insights to think about the future and sort of planning of how you look ahead?
Sure. So I'm very fortunate to be part of Bloomberg. When we think about purpose-oriented content, Mike Bloomberg is obviously the leader of our company and a public policy leader in a lot of realms like sustainability, like inclusion. And then Bloomberg has built its business on data. So when we actually think about pairing those two things, it really inspires purpose-driven innovation in a really natural way. So we're motivated to do that all the time. I think only 3 years ago, we had this sort of epiphany that climate change is perhaps the biggest challenge we're all facing since the Industrial Revolution, and there's no media brand that owns sustainability. And so pairing those ideals of data, pairing that idea of being a trusted resource around sustainability to launch Bloomberg Green, to really be that sort of global perspective of climate change and take a really optimistic view about all the great work that's happening in that space. After killing George Floyd, we had a similar sort of existential question and conversation. Who's covering equality from a global perspective? And the answer is no one. We have great things that are happening. The New York Times 16 Action Project is amazing, but it's US-centric. It's a project, and there's really not a global multi-platform brand that's covering that. And so we created this quality brand. And as you mentioned, we were well launched a couple of years ago too, to really think about how do we deliver both information on personal finance and investing, but also think about solutions and proactive advice for women, particularly in finance, are really looking for more tools and actions to support their growth, and really ensure that we were there to provide that. We do a lot of research, as you mentioned, around the modern leader. 80% of the modern leaders that we've surveyed in the US just this past January say that they want to change the world, and only 57% of them feel that they are empowered to do so. And so it's our mission to close that gap, and to give them the data and the tools they need to feel empowered to change the world.
That's awesome. We should be super proud of that work. It's really great. And I think the part that's so powerful too is as brands, you connect with consumers, and you have the ability to take the microphone and make a difference. And I feel like people are doing that at Bloomberg, so it's really powerful. I love it. All right, so shifting gears, it's not all about video. Obviously, there's a ton of other emerging platforms that are out there. So Sara, for you specifically, just thinking about in this fragmented market, what are some of the emerging platforms and tools that you're really using to break through? Like, what are the big things that you have your eye on at Archer Roose as you think about being an up-and-coming brand? How do you break through?
So really for encouraging come along on a journey. So we're really trying to describe really interesting context that, you know, it's something that you can use. It's something that's still quite hot. So I just keep trying to beat them and find out.
we've talked a lot just about emerging platforms in TikTok or the metaverse, and we were talking just about how your business models have had to evolve as Clinique continues to look at this marketplace and be specialized and nimble. Can you talk a little bit about kind of your experience and some of the things that you're most proud of?
Yeah, no, just that context, right? Clinique is one of the longest standing leaders in skincare and makeup. I hope there are some users in the room today. If not, we will convert you before the end of this session. But I think for us, right, like that next generation of consumer matters more than ever before because we have so much trust, we have so much equity that we have to convince a new consumer that they don't know what their mom knew about our brand. So for us, we've really been accelerating into new platforms and really taking a bet on where we think these platforms are going. So, for us, we've been mapping where do we think the value and the growth is going to sit on some of these platforms, and let's invest in them today as though they're already there. So we've been doing this on TikTok. We've been a fast mover into the metaverse, thanks to my exceptional team. And we have had some phenomenal results. We have been able to, pick up more impressions than we would have in some traditional media formats. More reach, more connectivity with younger consumers, a social conversation with younger consumers that wouldn't have been with us. And I think one of the things you guys are talking about is content. I think you have to release the reins a little bit. And, I worked at Google for a long time. We used to say this all the time, but even more so in these environments, you have to hold on to your equity, but you have to let go of some of those reins so the consumer can find their way to you. And I think that's some of the pivots that we're making. I think a couple of other things. If you're not test learning and iterating in your organization right now, make sure it's the number one thing that you're doing because you will not get it right. Every step will not be the right step, but the next step and the next step after that may get so much stronger. And that's the journey. Like that is the map in order to succeed in this space. And we've had some phenomenal wins just by doing that. I think if you're mapping, some of the things that we're doing, you'll see that along the way. And you can do that with your traditional media, right? We have torture test the heck out of our search bar. We do not let that search bar sit static ever. We're running pilots constantly. We knock out geos. There's so much stuff that we're doing to make sure that we are getting the most effective and efficiency out of our bars.
And I just have to say that coming from food that we actually look at cosmetics, health, and beauty as the North Star for what you guys are doing out there because it's really, legacy food can kind of sometimes be known to not be with the times all the time and stick with those 15-second videos and all of that. So totally, it's really great work.
Love it. Feel the love. It's awesome. So shifting gears just a little bit, there's been a lot of conversation about consumer first and taking an approach that really does put the consumer in the center of everything that you do. And a lot of that is fundamentally rooted in data. And I think somebody was saying earlier, shut up and listen. Really, we've got so much data and at our disposal to be able to be making informed marketing decisions. And I know a lot of you have been sort of touching on that through the course of the questions. But thinking about data in a different light, one of the things that obviously has been hugely disruptive is just the way in which consumers are buying products today. And with the rise of e-commerce, many of you have, for a long time relied on more in-store sales, brick and mortar, and have had to evolve your model to be more e-commerce driven. So Sarah, for you first, I'd say, how have you kind of evolved your strategy or kind of moved ahead with the understanding that, having someone go into the store to buy our Roose is not always the discovery, and has there been data that's really been powering the way that you push your product to different channels?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our team has actually started as a little so bars and restaurants, brands. And obviously in 2020, that partner, so it has direct-to-consumer channel in October 2020. And so we've been able to map from building our brands. I think what we're really hoping to consumer since our great long first-party data to really drive to our communication strategy and win there.
Does anyone else say? I'm sure somebody else has something to say on this topic.
I'm sure to get in there. So I think, so for Clinique, just for context again, we were ELC's first brand, Estée Lauder's first brand to be on the D2C platform. So we have a really deep global platform in the D2C market. So a couple of things for us that we learned is if you walk into a department store and you interact with our brand, we've been built on this really beautiful high-touch diagnostic service. We promise we will understand your skin concern or your skin tone, and we will give you the most optimal solution. So with COVID, we had to rapidly bring that online because consumers, if they're going to put their hand in their pocket and spend on prestige, we had better still deliver that same experience. So we have some amazing high-touch and high-tech services that sit on our brand.com, and they actually now spinning off across different channels. And some great stats, right? We find that more of our AI-based technology significantly over-indexes with a younger consumer. We are more likely to touch a younger consumer who can quickly take a selfie and rely on our derm-based protocols that can run through in the blink of an eye and diagnose their concern and give them a solution. Yet our older consumers, they want to have a really beautiful consult with a Clinique consultant. And what happens is when you consumers that service online, the time they spend with the brand, the frequency in which they return, and then the way that they convert and what they spend just continues to grow. And in a world where it's really hard to build loyalty, we just continue to see that services online is of so much value. Someone asked before about live streaming in China. My goodness me, yes, we are all up in it. We are all up about it. It's just so true. Like shopping is entertainment. Make that entertainment super engaging. So we're continuing to build in that space. Love it. That's awesome. Alex, so thinking about data in a different light, and with some of the disruption and changes you've made in the media strategy that's been very, historically dependent on MMM models and MMA, like how do you look at the future of measurement and performance based on just all of the new channels and ways in which you're buying?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been doing MMMs for years now. Got rid of that model. It just wasn't timely enough. We weren't getting the insights fast enough, and we actually weren't even trusting the metrics that were coming back at some points. So we're actually exploring a few different opportunities right now with bespoke data providers, because every business is completely different, and measuring those sales touch points, e-com, commerce, in-store, D2C, we need to come up with a new solution. So I don't have a silver bullet answer, but I know we're exploring a lot of different ways to measure this stuff because it's not just in store anymore.
Yeah, it's hugely complicated. And Rahul, I think we talk a lot just about how on earth do you keep up with all of this and remain specialized at the same time? So
it's one of the toughest leadership challenge that you have. You have a constantly evolving machine, and you have to fit it. Right? You have to fit your whole team, your whole operating model to it. I look at it in a very simple manner. It's first of all, you need to understand what is the ecosystem you want to create internally. What are you going to outsource? What are you going to keep in-house? That obviously depends a lot on the maturity of the organization, the maturity of the muscle. Like something like streaming, nobody knows which one you can outsource it. But also, is that going to be a competitive advantage for your company? Once you have that line, then you need to go back and see, how do I recruit talent for it? Honestly, I've had the privilege of building organizations, digital-first organizations a couple of times. The job descriptions I wrote in 2017 were new for them. The job descriptions I'm writing now are not the ones I wrote in 2017. So it's so fastly evolving as a leader. It's fascinating, but also super challenging.
It's super challenging, and I would say, diversity of talent is hugely important. And I'd say how we source this talent and invest in this talent is just going to be table stakes to how we grow in the future, and that is, being representative across our the world that we live in. And so, Anne, I'd love to just talk or listen a little bit more to kind of how you capitalized on diversifying the talent at Bloomberg and sort of things that you've been focused on, specifically with the work that you're doing.
Sure. So I'll maybe first start with some of the partnerships that we're doing externally for this. So I think in terms of what you were mentioning about staying on top of things and thinking about how to just keep up with everything that's happening, I think one of the ways that we're doing that is actually partnering with other people to do that, right? And really bringing other people's credibilities and strengths where it makes sense. So one thing that we're spending a lot of time on, which I'm sure a lot of us are, is crypto, right? And thinking about how do we marry our data-driven journalism on crypto with Twitter. Twitter is where the conversation is happening. The conversation is so saturated, and the conversation is quite frequently not necessarily fact-driven. And so Twitter and Bloomberg are partnering to create new products to help users understand what is actually valid and what isn't valid. How do we curate the latest on coins? How do we curate the latest on the news of the day and really provide that to our audience? That's one way. The other thing I mentioned Bloomberg equality before, it's not lost on us that we are owned by a white owner, right? And so as we get into the equality space, we wanted to partner with Black-owned media brands to think about how do we reach communities of color? How do we support Black-owned media? So we're partnering with Ebony and Atlanta Black Star on original content, on sharing our data, on working through different offers for advertisers and sort of sharing ad revenue. But really getting into partners to help us with that credibility. And then internally, obviously, a lot of programs around, having people be able to move from one region to another. That's been very important for us and show growth. I think one of the big things that we're trying to do is show career progression and education and expansion of goals, so making that available to people.
Talk mobility is awareness, and a really nice demonstration of just how people can grow.
All right, we're being told that we're pretty much almost at time, so opening it up for the room for questions.
Hey, Anne, I have a question for you. Can you talk about the validation model? That, like, how you're getting the kind of crypto and focus on? Like, what does that validation model look like for you guys? Like for the trusted content, what does that look like?
Sure. Just to make sure I understand the question, when you're referencing validation model, what specifically?
So you mentioned that there's a lot of news on Twitter that's not necessarily trustworthy.
Yes.
So what is your model for validating that trustworthy content, and how are you using DeFi to drive that?
Yeah, great question. So it's a combination between proprietary Bloomberg intelligence on crypto and financial markets with Twitter data around verified accounts, and then actually manually going through verified accounts and sort of fact checking some of this. So a lot of it is actually manual because it isn't easy to actually understand what is valid and what's not valid.
You should create an NFT where people have to get in to basically, you create the NFT where I'm a validated source and I have this NFT that proves that I'm a validated source.
Let's talk. Let's talk after this.
Okay, I got ideas. I got the lightning bolts.
That's awesome.
More questions? All right, one last question. You want to do like a fireside round or fire round? Sure. I think if we could just go down the line, what is the one emerging platform or technology that's like the must-have of the future that you're, thinking about? And we can go in either order, but.
The metaverse and what Sunjin has called it the metaverse is, I think actually trademarked it, this is going to be something big, and NFTs absolutely.
I guess I would have sold live streaming, but it's more related to social commerce. The live streaming separate would be different. But I'll also add, I think, watch out for regional media networks. They are going to become huge, just Walmart and everyone coming out. They are just at the tip of the iceberg.
Both good points. For us, we're obsessed with communities in Web3, making sure that we're understanding them and we're testing on them and we're moving through them. That's really important for us.
For us, it's thinking about video everywhere. So we spent a lot of time today talking about OTT, but really thinking about it a little bit more holistically and thinking about how we actually engage with customers across all aspects of video on all platforms.
And for us, I think that we're new to brands, and so what we do with video first for a lot of our efforts, and then some social tools like connected
TV, but I think that we also find ways to catch the consumer more directly via blog and some more traditional vehicles, but we're still going to make this culture as intentional.
Just because we're looking at the future doesn't mean everything from the past. Back to the basics, right? We got to be brilliant at the basics. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.